दोस्तों ऐं साथियो सलाम नमस्ते मां आहियां तव्हांजो होस्ट दिलीप रतनाणी ऐं अॼु मां कैनेडा खां जेको हीउ प्रोग्राम तव्हांजे खे पेश करणु वञी रहियो आहियां उन प्रोग्राम जो मौज़ू आहे लॉस्ट सिंध एंड मेमोरीज़ ऑफ पार्टीशन जे वक़्तु जेको हिंदू सिंधी हो उहो हिंदुस्तान लॾे वियो ऐं एस्टिमेटेड फिगर जेका ॿुधाए थी उहो इहो ॿुधाए थी त approximately 10 million Hindus and Sikhs migrated to India. 10 million, पर कुछ माण्हू चवनि था त 15 million people जेके आहिनि उहो माइग्रेट करे विया। असल में जेको माइग्रेशन थी उहो कहिड़ियुनि हालतुनि में थी ऐं कीअं थी इहो त हाणे तारीख़ जो हिसो आहे, पर तारीख़ जी इहा वॾे में वॾी माइग्रेशन हुई। तारीख़ जी वॾे में वॾी माइग्रेशन हुई। Majority of the minority Hindus and Sikh in Pakistan migrated to India while the Muslim migrant migrated to Pakistan. माना हिकिड़नि हिंदुस्तान माइग्रेशन कई ऐं ॿियनि पाकिस्तान माइग्रेशन कई ऐं उन्हनि जूं जेके गवर्नमेंट्स हुयूं उन्हनि इहो बि उन वक़्तु चयो त जेके माण्हू होॾे वेंदा उन्हनि खे कंपनसेशन मिलंदी, जेके माण्हू हेॾे ईंदा उन्हनि खे कंपनसेशन मिलंदी, पर हक़ीक़त में ईअं न थियो। माइग्रेशन में फर्दर एग्रीवेशन तॾहिं थी जॾहिं वायलेंस ब्रोक आउट इन कराची आफ्टर पार्टीशन। In 19 according to the census of India 1951 nearly 7,76,000 Sindhi Hindus were forced to migrate to India to avoid conversion. So 51 में तकरीबन 8 लख खन हिंदूस माइग्रेट करिया। मुल्क जे ठहिण खां पोइ 51 धारे फसादात थिया कराची में, उन में बि 8 लखनि जी माइग्रेशन थी। उन खां पोइ जेको रियलिटी आहे उहो डॉक्यूमेंट्स आहिनि ऐं काफ़ी ॿिया नंबर्स बि आहिनि, पर अॼु असां हिकिड़ो वीडियो तव्हांजे अॻियां पेश कंदासीं। उहो जेको आहे सो उन वक़्तु जेका सिंधी औरत कमल छाबड़िया जेका पार्टीशन जे वक़्तु ॼाई, उहो छा थी चए, असां उनजी इहा वीडियो ॾिसूं था। उन खां पोइ उनजी रोशनी में असां ॻाल्हाईंदासीं त जेका माइग्रेशन थी उहा कहिड़नि हालतुनि में थी, उन में कहिड़ियूं तकलीफ़ूं थियूं, उन खां पोइ अॻियां इहा शइ अॼु जी तारीख़ में इहा शइ कीअं नज़र अचे थी। त अचो त पहिरीं उहा वीडियो ॾिसूं, उन खां पोइ असां कचहरी खे जारी रखूं।
In August 1947, when, after 300 years in India, the British rule finally came to an end, what should have been a moment of crowning triumph, after years of anti-colonial struggle, was ruined by unforgettable and unimaginable violence. The people of India had to pay the heavy price of partition. Indian subcontinent was partitioned into two independent nations, Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan. Immediately, there began one of the greatest migrations in human history, as millions of Muslims trekked to West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, while millions of Hindus and Sikhs headed in the opposite direction. Kamal Tolia, a Sindhi, who was born in Mumbai soon after partition, shares the story of struggle her family went through.
I was born 1.5 years after partition, but what my family experienced, I can tell you. So when the people in India wanted a separate country and the line was going to be drawn to divide the country into two parts, nobody really knew where the line would be drawn. And when it happened, it was because the people from Pakistan who wanted Pakistan, they needed a seaport, and the only seaport they had was Karachi. So they wanted Karachi and they wanted that whole part of Sindh. And it was given to them in the negotiations for another part in India. So what happened when the line was drawn, we woke up the next morning, all of us Sindhis, to find that we were completely on the wrong side of the border. All of us, all of Sindh was totally in Pakistan. The line went through Punjab as well, but at least it divided Punjab into two parts. So there was a West Punjab and there was an East Punjab. So the people who migrated, at least they had a Punjab. We became aliens in our own land because the whole of Sindh was now in Pakistan. Now, when you look at it, it does not seem like a very big event, but it started with us feeling insecure. All of us were feeling that we were aliens in our own land, and all our Muslim brothers and sisters that were actually quite friendly with us before partition started to look at us with suspicion, and there was a lot of fear in the air. And that's when the silent migration of Hindu Sindhis from Sindh into India began.
The partition of India forced millions of people to leave their homes. Up to 2 million people lost their lives in the most horrific manner. There was nothing that could have prepared the approximately 15 million refugees for this nightmare. Partition was accompanied by bloodshed that was never seen before.
Everybody knows the horrors that happened in Punjab, where the people were burnt on the trains and all the trains came with dead corpses across the border. All those horrors are well documented and well known. But the sacrifice that the Sindhi Hindus made during partition is not known at all.
An estimated 12 lakh to 14 lakh Sindhi Hindus migrated to India, primarily by ship or train.
The sea route from Karachi, we were living in Karachi, so the sea route from Karachi to India by ship was still under British control. So there were not that much of mismanagement there, and it was quite a safe route to go through compared to Punjab and going through the trains and everything. So it was not too bad, but it had to be done secretly, because if the Muslims came to know that you were migrating or that you were leaving, they made life hell for you. They came in, they stole all your things, they took the girls away, raped them and so on. So you had to show as if you're still there, but you're going to be, you had to plan very secretly. So my family and my father's sisters who were living up country, they all had to come down, pretend they don't know each other. They had to spend a couple of nights on the ship dockyard, and then, when they got a chance, they would be going by the ship. Okay, there was no fare for that, because after partition, the whole of the world realized what a mess it was, and the Hindus going towards India and the Muslims going towards Pakistan. It was a total mess, and so there was no fare or anything. You could just board the ship and come through. I remember my mother telling me that they could not take much money. We had a flour mill in Karachi. We were pretty rich there. We had a nice flour mill, all the wheat flour and the dals and the pulses, all the flour that was being made there. And we were very prosperous there. But when we had to leave everything behind. And my mother said that she had stitched up all saris together with notes inside, with money inside, and to serve as blankets for us, so that nobody would suspect that we carried any money or anything. So it was a very tough life.
Sindhis left behind their ancestral homeland, wealth, and friends and family. Many of them were hopeful of returning home. Not many of them who are alive to share the story highlight the tales of survival and re-establishment in an unknown land.
Because of the refugee conditions of moving here and going there, my 6-month-old sister actually contracted pneumonia and died. She just died, and those were the kind of conditions people went through.
After partition, Sindhis arrived in the province of Bombay in their largest numbers.
When they came across, I wasn't born then. I was born 1.5 years after partition. In the refugee conditions, I was born, there was no doctor, no midwife, nothing. I just came. So can you imagine what must have been the situation for people there? Children were being born, children were dying, and it was just a never-ending story. Everybody thought we are leaving our motherland, it's okay, everything will settle down and we'll be able to go back. That's the normal thinking of people, that all this upheaval is there, I'm sure it'll all settle down and we'll go back. But it never happened. we just continued there. And I myself was born. My father was told that I think he learned it a little late, that there is compensation. Both countries decided that if the refugees could prove that they had land, they were landowners, or they had a business or something or a property, then the corresponding government would compensate them for that. Okay? So because we had left Karachi thinking that we could go back anyway afterwards, we didn't have any papers. So my father had to settle all the kids in school, 20 odd kids of different families, and he went back to Karachi to get the papers and try to sell the mill and everything. He came back and it was submitted, the papers were submitted, but the compensation didn't come till 14 years later. And not because people were not ready to part with that money, it's not that. Just everything was a mess. The whole administration thing was a mess. Nobody knew anything. And, if you just read a little bit, Google a little bit about partition, you'll know that it was the worst horror of India ever.
The extent of anguish, helplessness and pain that people went through as they battled and survived the 1947 period has been overlooked by the world.
He's quite an elderly man, and he would come home and cry. He would see the children there and cry. And we used to laugh at him because, a big man crying. Until we were explained by my father that, don't laugh at him because he lost his little girl there. He was walking across the border, and in those days they used to hide the children in sacks, in gunny sacks, with potatoes and things, so that if they were seen walking with the girl across, they would just take the girl away. That's it. The soldiers there and everything, they would just take her away. So they used to hide them in gunny bags and things. But even the soldiers knew that trick. So they would be poking the sacks. And of course the child would cry out. So he lost his little girl because the girl, they took out the girl from the bag and took her away. He cried a lot there. He's saying that, don't take my little girl away, I won't go across. I'll stay here. I don't want to go across. Please give me my girl back. But they didn't. They didn't give him his daughter back. So he lost his daughter. And that's why when he would come and see us in Mumbai, he would cry because he would think his daughter would be this big and so on. So, we don't know, the world doesn't know what Sindh has sacrificed.
It was deeply scarring and traumatic, which changed the lives of 15 million people dramatically, uprooting them from places and communities where they had lived for generations. They lost languages, ways of life, property, heirlooms, and their family members.
Sindhis are well known to have settled very nicely wherever they are. They fit in with the culture at the expense of their own culture, I would say. You can't keep up your traditions and your language as well when you don't have a motherland. So in India, although we are Hindus, we don't have a place to call our own. There was a huge sacrifice made by the Sindhis. And wherever they've gone, they've worked well, they've never begged, and they contribute to the economy in a big way in every country.
The conflict between Hindus and Muslims has a long lineage in India, even before the bloody partition of the subcontinent. Hindu-Muslim conflict also existed before the British, and dates back to pre-British era, when Indian subcontinent was invaded by Muslim rulers.
I remember my mother telling me this, that the conflict between the Muslims and the Hindus has been an ongoing thing for centuries. It's not anything new. Even when she was growing up there, now my mother was born in 1912 or so you can imagine more than 100 years ago. She said that the Muslims would just come in and just go and destroy the house, take everything, whatever, and it happened periodically because of the Muslims coming and taking the young girls away, like a natural, it was a normal thing. So the girls and the boys were actually betrothed when they were very young. So my mother must have been about 8 or 10 years, and she was betrothed to my father. That means the parents had agreed that this is how it's going to be. And the girl would also go and stay with her family, although she was very young. I mean, she's immature, you can't have a relationship with her. But she would be staying there, sleeping with her mother-in-law. And when people would be coming through, raping and killing and all, they would say, no, she's already married, she's married, she's not unmarried, because they were looking for young girls who were unmarried. So that's the kind of background that was existing in those days. Things were better, things were worse, but it was never as good as in India.
The current situation of Sindh hasn't changed much, even after centuries. Majority of Pakistan's Hindu population, which is merely 2%, is settled in Sindh, and they are the victims of heinous crimes.
Nothing has changed. In fact, it's only got worse. The situation in Sindh is so bad. When you cannot allow your children, your daughters, to go around the corner to buy something for fear of them being abducted. When you can't go to sleep at night in peace because some people armed with guns come in and just take your daughter away. Every day, 3 girls or more, 3 or more Hindu and Sikh girls are kidnapped every day. What can you say when the girls are forced to convert into Islam? And these are minor girls, they are not adults. These minor girls are forced to convert into Islam and married off to older men. What can you say about that? Or they are put up for prostitution. There's a lot of human rights violations going on there which need to be addressed and need to be understood. Sindh is not a place worth living in now for the minorities, whether they are Hindus, whether they are Sikhs, whether they are Christians, whether they are Buddhists. It's just simply a terrible, terrible place to stay in.
Pakistan has been carrying out genocide of Sindhi Hindus for quite some time. It's an everyday story of abduction, rape, forceful religious conversion, vandalizing Hindu temples, and loot and murder of Hindu traders. The government has turned a blind eye towards crime against minorities in Pakistan.
We have a lot of them coming across to India, and I speak to them. I've spoken to some of them in Sindhi, and they just say, India is heaven. We will never go back.
The migration of Sindhi Hindus to India has increased over the past few years. Atrocities against Hindus in Pakistan has compelled more than 5,000 Hindus to leave Pakistan every year.
The world doesn't know what Sindh has sacrificed, and it is still continuing to sacrifice. This has been going on for more than 73 years. India has offered them citizenship. I would say they all deserve to be citizens. After all, they were all citizens of undivided India. Many of them were too illiterate and too poor to even know that partition was going on. Those families that came across like mine, they were educated and they knew what was happening. But there were a whole lot of them that didn't know anything about partition. They are the ones left behind, and they are suffering in a very bad way. I would appeal to the world organizations to please help them out so they can live as decent human beings, which is not a big thing, it's your human right not to be persecuted because of your religion, not to be persecuted socially, and I don't think anything is going to happen in Pakistan as such, because nothing has happened so far for the 75 years.
दोस्तों, तव्हां कमल छाबड़िया जी वीडियो तव्हां ॾिठी, उन में हक़ीक़त जीअं हुई तीअं उन पेश कई आहे। ऐं हुनजो इहो चवणो त जिन हालतुनि में माण्हू माइग्रेट करे आया उन्हनि खे हुते कंपनसेशन कोन मिलियो, ऐं जेकॾहिं कंपनसेशन मिलियो त उहो 14 सालनि ताईं न मिलियो। ऐं उन खां सवाइ जेके तकलीफ़ूं उन्हनि सठियूं ऐं जेके मुश्किलातूं उन्हनि ॾिठियूं, उन्हनि मुश्किलातुनि मां उहो हिंदू सिंधी अॼु 70 सालनि खां ॿाहिरि निकिरी पंहिंजे पेरनि ते बीह रहिया आहिनि। अॼु हिंदू सिंधी पूरी दुनिया में आहे, ख़ुशहाल आहे, कारोबार करे थो, पर उनखे हिकिड़ी तकलीफ़ आहे त हुन पंहिंजी धरती विञाई। धरती विञाई न बल्कि हुन खां छॾाई वई, मां त ईअं चवंदुसि। हाणे सवाल तो पैदा थिए त अॼु जी तारीख़ में जेको 2% माइनॉरिटीज़ आहिनि, इंक्लूडिंग 2% रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ जेके अॼु जी तारीख़ में जेको मौजूदु आहिनि पाकिस्तान में या सिंध में, उहे केतिरा सेफ आहिनि, उहे केतिरा उन्हनि खे कानूनी हक़ मिलनि था, उन्हनि खे केतिरियूं सहूलियतूं आहिनि, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली उन्हनि जा राइट्स केतिरा गारंटी आहिनि, छा अॼु बि मज़हब जी जबरी तब्दीली नथी थिए, छा अॼु उन्हनि खे मुकमल राइट मिलनि था, छा उहे पंहिंजो रिलीजियस एक्सरसाइज करे सघनि था आज़ादी सां, छा उहे माइनॉरिटी करे ट्रीट कया वञनि था, छा उन्हनि सां ॿिए दर्जे जे शहरी जो सलूक कयो वञे थो, छा कोर्टनि मां उन्हनि खे रिलीफ मिले थो। ही उहे सवाल आहिनि जिन जो जवाबु तव्हांखे ॻोल्हणो आहे ऐं असांखे ॻोल्हणो आहे। यकीनन असांजे पाड़ेसरी मुल्क जो इहो चवणु आहे त तव्हां पंहिंजी धरती छॾे हुते अचो त असां तव्हांखे सिटीज़नशिप ॾियूं था, पर इहो एतिरो सवलो न आहे। जेके हिंदू या माइनॉरिटीज़, रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ पाकिस्तान में मौजूदु आहिनि, उन्हनि जे लाइ पंहिंजा कखाणा घर, पंहिंजा कारोबार, पंहिंजूं सभु शयूं छॾे वञणु मुमकिन न आहे। जेकॾहिं को बि पाड़ेसरी मुल्क या ॿियो जेकॾहिं रिलीफ ॾियणु थो चाहे त उन्हनि खे उते रिलीफ ॾियारे। इहो चवणु त माइग्रेशन मसइले जो हल आहे, माइग्रेशन करे अचो असां सिटीज़नशिप ॾियूं था, त पोइ इहो थोरो ॾुखियो थो थी वञे। इहो ज़रूरु तव्हांजो ऑप्शन आहे माण्हुनि खे चवण जे लाइ त माइग्रेट करे अचो असां सिटीज़नशिप ॾींदासीं, पर प्रैक्टिकली जेके माण्हू ख़ुशहाल आहिनि, जेके माण्हू हुते वेठा आहिनि ऐं जिन माण्हुनि खे कारोबार आहिनि, जिन माण्हुनि जूं रूट्स हुते आहिनि, जिन माण्हुनि जो कल्चर हुते आहे, जिन माण्हुनि जी ॿोली हुते आहे, त उन लाइ माइग्रेशन वॾो ॾुखियो कमु आहे। पर ठीकु आहे, तव्हांजी इहा ऑफर आहे त मोटी अचो, असां इमिग्रेशन ॾींदासीं या असां जेको आहे सो तव्हांखे फैसिलिटेट कंदासीं। त यकीनन इहा ॻाल्हि डोर त खोले थी सिंध जे हिंदू जे लाइ त उहो लॾे वञे, पर लॾणु हिन वक़्तु ताईं मामले जो हल न रहियो आहे। लॾण सां जिथे नई धरती ते माण्हू वञे थो त उते ॿिया मामलात शुरू थियनि था। त ओवरऑल इहो चवणु त तव्हां लॾे वञो हिंदुस्तान मां दुरुस्त न आहे। जेके बि हालतूं आहिनि, जेके बि हक़ीक़तूं आहिनि, उहे सिंध में आहिनि, उन्हनि खे फेस करिणो पवंदो, उन्हनि खे मुंहुं ॾियणो पवंदो। बाक़ी जेके ख़ुशी सां वञिणो आहे त उहे वञी सघनि था, उनमें कंहिंखे बि का रोक टोक कान्हे। इन माइग्रेशन ते, लॾ पलाण ते, हिंदू ते, मुस्लिम ते, उन ते घणी सियासत थी वई, तमामु घणी सियासत थी वई। 70 सालनि खां सिंध इहो इन ॿिनि पुड़नि में विरहाइजी वई। ॾिसो, बांग्लादेश बि ठही वियो ऐं पंजाब बि ठही वियो, ऐं जेको आहे सो पार्टीशन जे वक़्तु बंगाल बि ठहियो अलॻि सां, हुन पासे बि हिन पासे बि, पंजाब हुन पासे ठहियो, हिन पासे ठहियो। जेको लैंड वई उहा सिंध जी वई, जेको तारीख़ वई उहा सिंध जी वई, मास माइग्रेशन थी उहा हिंदू सिंधी कई। अॼु जेको हिंदू सिंधी सिंध में वेठो आहे उहो सिर्फ़ु असांजे मुस्लमान भाइरनि खे इहो गुज़ारिश थो करे त जबरी मज़हब तब्दीली खे रोकियो ऐं उन्हनि जी हिफ़ाज़त कयो, उन्हनि खे कानूनी हक़ ॾियो ऐं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में बराबरी जो दर्जो ॾियो। छाकाणि हू सिंध जा असली वारिस आहिनि। जेको हिंदू सिंधी आहे उहो सिंध जो असली वारिस आहे, उहो सिंध जो मालिक आहे, उहो सिंध जो हिसेदार आहे, उहो धरती धणी आहे। जेकॾहिं धरती धणी खे मज़हब जी बुनियाद ते मारियो वञे थो, मज़हब जी बुनियाद ते डिस्क्रिमिनेट कयो वञे थो, मज़हब जी बुनियाद ते हुन सां 2 नंबर सलूक कयो वञे थो, त इहो दुरुस्त न आहे। असांजूं जेके बि क़ौमी पार्टियूं आहिनि, असांजूं जेके बि सियासी पार्टियूं आहिनि, उहो प्रायोरिटी बुनियादनि ते, तरजीही बुनियादनि ते इहो इशू उथारीनि त सिंध जे हिंदू सिंधीअ खे, बल्कि समूरनि रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ खे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में बराबरी जो दर्जो ॾिनो वञे। इहो मामिलो तॾहिं हल थी सघे थो जॾहिं असां इहा घुर कंदासीं त समूरनि रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ खे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में बराबरी जो दर्जो ॾिनो वञे। ईअं न त को माइनॉरिटीज़ खे हक़ न वञे। माइनॉरिटी न आहियूं असां मेजॉरिटी आहियूं, असां गॾु आहियूं, असां हिकु आहियूं, असां हुन धरती जा वारिस आहियूं। त पोइ माइनॉरिटी सॾण, उन्हनि खे इहो चवण त 5% कोटा मिलंदो, माइनॉरिटीज़ आहियो तव्हां, न, इहो ग़लति आहे। इहो ईअं न हुजणु घुरिजे। जेके बि क़ौमी पार्टियूं आहिनि, वफ़ाक़ी पार्टियूं आहिनि, सूबाई पार्टियूं आहिनि, उन्हनि जे अॻुवाणनि खे मुंहिंजी गुज़ारिश आहे त तव्हां इहो इशू पंहिंजे मैनिफेस्टो में रखो, पंहिंजी प्रायोरिटी ते रखो, त जेको सिंध जो हिंदू आहे उनखे बराबरी जो दर्जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ॾियो। हाणे सुवाल थो पैदा थिए, जेकॾहिं तव्हां इहा ॻाल्हि न कंदो त पोइ तव्हां इहो जेको सिंध जो जेको इहो मास आहे उनजी कीअं हिफ़ाज़त कंदो? उन सां माना तव्हां 2 नंबर जो सलूक करे हलण था चाहियो, उनखे तव्हां 5% कोटा ते राज़ी रखी हलण था चाहियो, उनखे तव्हां बराबरी जी बुनियाद ते नथा वठी हलणु चाहियो, उनखे तव्हां 2 या 4 सीटूं ॾेई तव्हां ईअं हलण था चाहियो, त ईअं सिंध तरक़ी न कंदी, ईअं सिंध अॻियां न वेंदी, ईअं सिंध इर्तिका जा मरहला तय न कंदी। तंहिंजे करे इहो असांजी सियासी पार्टियुनि जी ज़िम्मेवारी आहे, ख़ासि करे उहे क़ौमी पार्टियूं जेके सूबाई असैम्बली जी सियासत करणु थियूं चाहिनि, उहे आज़ादी पसंदि पार्टियूं जेके सिंध जी आज़ादी जी ॻाल्हि कनि थियूं, उन्हनि खे बि सोचणो पवंदो त सिंधी हिंदू and all religious minorities, they need equal rights, equal representation and constitutional protection. Constitution में बराबरी जे दर्जे जी ॻाल्हि कयो। जेकॾहिं तव्हां जूं सियासी पार्टियूं इहे बराबरी जी ॻाल्हि नथियूं कनि त पोइ सिंध जो हिंदू या रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ इहा ॻाल्हि आसानी सां सम्झी सघनि थियूं। जेके पार्टियूं आहिनि उहे उन्हनि खे पंहिंजो हक़ नथियूं ॾियणु चाहिनि, बल्कि सिर्फ़ु माइनॉरिटी करे ट्रीट थियूं करणु चाहिनि। त हाणे असां उन नतीजे ते पहुता आहियूं 70 सालनि खां पोइ, जेको हिंदू सिंधी सिंध मां लॾंदो थो वञे ऐं उनजी जॻह ते अफ़गानी, बर्मी, बंगाली ऐं ॿिया उहे ईंदा था वञनि, उन्हनि खे एक्सेप्ट कयो थो वञे। पर जेको धरती जो मालिक आहे, जेको धरती जी ॿोली ॻाल्हाए थो, जेको धरती ते मौजूदु आहे, उनखे इहो चई तहफ़ुज़ नथो ॾिनो वञे त हे धरती जो वारिस आहे। तंहिंजे करे धरती जा जेके वारिस आहिनि उन्हनि जी मालिकी थियणु घुरिजे, प्रायोरिटी ते उहो मसइलो हल थियणु घुरिजे। ऐं ईअं करण सां हिकिड़ो इहो थींदो त असांजी माइग्रेशन बि कोन थींदी ऐं धरती वासी पाण में जुड़ंदा, कल्चर मज़बूत थींदो, ॿोली मज़बूत थींदी। इहो असांजे सिंधी मुस्लमान भाइरनि खे खुले दिमाग़ सां सोचणो पवंदो, बिल्कुलु ओपन माइंड सां, बिल्कुलु खुलियल दिमाग़ सां तव्हांखे इहा शइ करणी पवंदी त सिंध जो हिंदू ऐं ऑल रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़, नॉट ओनली हिंदू, ऑल रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ आर इक्वल। उन्हनि खे असांखे बराबरी जो दर्जो ॾियणो आहे, उन्हनि खे आइनी तौर बराबरि वठी अचिणो आहे, उन्हनि खे पंहिंजो सम्झणो आहे, कंहिं बि क़िस्म जी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन न आहे करणी। ऐं उमेदु कयां थो त सिंध जूं जेके बि क़ौमी पार्टियूं आहिनि, सिंध यूनाइटेड पार्टी आहे या तरक़ी पसंदि आहे, या जीए सिंध महाज़ रियाज़ शाह जो ग्रुप आहे, या जीए सिंध नवाज़ खान ज़हूर जी आहे, या जीए सिंध जा ॿिया दोस्त आहिनि, या पलीजुब तहरीक आहे, या क़ौमी अवामी तहरीक आहे, या जेके बि आहिनि, उन्हनि खे इहो ओपनली अॼु इहो डिमांड करणी पवंदी हिन स्टेट खां त सिंध जे हिंदू खे ऐं समूरनि रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ खे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में बराबरि जो दर्जो ॾियो। कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जेसि ताईं तव्हां बराबरी नथा ॾियो, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जेसीं तव्हां डिस्क्रिमिनेट कयो था, ओसि ताईं तव्हां कंहिं माण्हू जी हिफ़ाज़त अक्सरियती जी बि न करे सघंदो। अक़लियती जी हिफ़ाज़त परे जी ॻाल्हि आहे, पर तव्हां पंहिंजे अक्सरियत खे बि तहफ़ुज़ न फ़राहम करे सघंदो, छाकाणि बुनियादी ॻाल्हि आहे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल गारंटी जी, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल इक्वालिटी जी, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बराबरी जी। तंहिंजे करे मुंहिंजो हिकु दफ़ो वरी बि इहो मैसेज आहे त सिंध जेको 47 में विञायो, सिंध जेको माज़ीअ में विञायो, सिंध जो 15 मिलियन माण्हू सिंध मां लॾे वियो ऐं 1951 में 8 लख ॿियो माण्हू लॾे वियो। ऐं हे कमल छाबड़िया जी बि तव्हां गुफ़्तगू ॿुधी, त हाणे असांखे इहो सोचणो पवंदो त जेकॾहिं असांखे इहा माइग्रेशन स्टॉप करणी आहे त असांखे सिंध जे हिंदू जी, बल्कि समूरी रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ जी असांखे मालिकी करणी पवंदी, ईमानदारीअ सां, सचाई सां। ऐं जेकॾहिं असीं ईअं कंदासीं त असीं मोहन जे दड़े जी जेका सिंध आहे उनखे बचाए वेंदासीं। जेकॾहिं असां ईअं न कंदासीं त पोइ सिंध न बचंदी। हाणे फ़ैसिलो तव्हांजे हक़ में आहे, तव्हां छा था चाहियो? बसि मुंहिंजी इहा ई गुज़ारिश आहे। तव्हां समूरनि दोस्तनि जी महिरबानी।